Hello. Last time we talked we were discussing a model of time where it could be viewed almost as a tree with many branching paths, where the entirety of everything that not only will happen but could happen is already mapped out in the time-space continuum. The universe is an entire model in which past, present, future are already present. Everything has already happened. It's complete from start to finish. And we chart our little paths through it. But our decisions still have meaning. Because of all of the many paths available to follow in this model, we can choose which ones we steer our course along. You can almost see a life as a roller coaster, but it has points and junctions where you can alter the direction that the track takes. And it's a big idea to get your head around, and I thought that this time we'd look at a simplified model of this very thing actually in practice. Those of you who, like me, are of a certain age, if you cast your minds back to the 1980s, series of books such as this one were popular at the time. Game books. This is one of the Fighting Fantasy series. There was the Choose Your Own Adventure series, and many others. They were very popular at the time. But you know, the fascinating thing about this book, it's a game. You read the book, you read the opening paragraph, and then you decide what happens next. On this particular page you have 4 choices. You can examine the potions and turn to a certain page. You can study the Mythica, turn to a different page. You can read the Arcanum, turn to a different page. Or you can simply leave this area and turn to a yet different page. 4 choices. You get to choose which one happens in the story. And you turn to the appropriate numbered paragraph and continue reading from there. And depending on the choice you've made, the story will be different. And yet, all of the possible story strands are complete and written in this book. Whichever of the choices you make, they already exist. But you will only make one choice on your read-through. And your story will be different depending upon the choices you've made. And yet all exist within these pages. Game books became popular in a time before computers were sophisticated enough to give us the kind of video games that are available today. But they're a step forward on the same concept. If you play one of the open world games which are so popular these days, such as the Far Cry series or the Elder Scrolls series, you're free to explore that game world and go anywhere you want, do anything you want, and all of the eventualities, anything you might do, are already programmed into the probabilities which determine the working of that game world. There's nothing you can do that hasn't already been anticipated and prepared for and written in. All of the main plot strands are already fleshed out and written. And you can take usually several different variant routes through them. And the choices you make determine what will happen on your screen as you play. Taking that still further, in more recent times we have the multiplayer games, which add other people into the mix, just as we have other people in the real world that we live in. and the choices of all these people impact upon each other, and yet it's all pre-programmed and written into the software which creates the game world and all of the responses to the various actions. They all pre-exist, either in detail or in potential. And so we have this kind of perfect marriage between determinism and free will, in which both are paradoxically present and correct. So I hope looking at things from this kind of fictional aspect, with interactive fiction where you make choices which determine the path of the story, helps to flesh out the model that we discussed last time a little more. But it also raises a very interesting question and speculation, which I'd like to talk about next time, and which will lead to yet more models for us to think about. And you'll notice at no point here am I providing you with answers or fait accompli. I'm providing you with models to think about. And the direction your thoughts follow will be your own. A life in a book. An adventure in a book. An adventure which is begun and finished depending upon your own choices. But the entirety of the Bloodbones adventure is described in this book, in all of its possible permutations. So what happens when I close the book? The memories of the adventure I've been on remain in my mind. That life, that existence remains in my mind. But I am not contained within the pages of this book. I enter into it in my subjective experience through the process of reading it and interacting with it. But when I close the book and put it down, I remain. I'm larger than the book. I'm by no means defined by the choices in that book. What does that say about the world we live in and the nature of our own existence in it and outside of it? Is there a larger I outside the boundaries of everyday life in this world, who will still be there when the book closes? And how large is the outside? What's it like? Because from within the confines of that book, you couldn't possibly begin to imagine the increased complexity of life in this world. It would be the same be true of the next step, once we step out of this life and its developing story, which is shaped in just the same way by our decisions through a universe which already exists in its entirety. Who wrote the book? Who's reading the book? Who's reading the book of our lives right now? And what happens when the book is closed? They're the questions for reflection this time round. And I'll be suggesting 2 or 3 little models to give us some food for thought next time. Hope to see you again then. And thanks for following. Take care.